It starts when love feels steady one day and distant the next. Nothing big happens, but the ground still shifts under you. You stop leaning into people and start leaning into numbers. Money stays where you left it. It does not pull back when you need it. It does not change after a quiet night or a wrong tone. Emotional ground asks you to guess. Financial ground does not. Bills are clear about what they want. Balances do not hide meaning behind silence. When pressure comes from money, it arrives openly. You can see it and name it. When pressure comes from love, it often arrives without warning. There is no signal before the shift. The body starts noticing this difference quickly. One kind of pressure feels sharp but honest. The other feels soft but unstable. Over time, money begins to act like solid ground, not because it is kind, but because it does not move when you step on it. This is how financial pressure becomes a signal. It tells you where things will not suddenly change. It offers stability without closeness. That trade starts to feel reasonable long before it feels sad. This shift rarely begins in adult relationships alone. It echoes earlier experiences with closeness that changed without warning. Care may have felt present until it suddenly felt conditional. Love may have depended on mood rather than consistency. A child learns early that emotional ground can move even when they did nothing wrong. They learn to watch faces and tone for safety. Silence becomes something to interpret. Approval becomes something to manage. Stability does not come from warmth in that environment. It comes from what stays the same no matter the mood. Money appears early as something fixed. It is counted the same way every time. It does not withdraw when tension rises. It does not punish confusion or emotional need. When adults feel distant, money does not follow them. When affection tightens, money does not react. Over time, the mind pairs money with consistency. It pairs love with uncertainty. This pairing is not taught directly. It is absorbed through repetition. The body remembers what stayed solid when emotions shifted. That memory becomes a reference point later. It quietly shapes what feels reliable. Money begins carrying emotional weight before anyone names it. It becomes associated with ground that does not give way. Over time, the body builds preferences without asking for permission. It tracks what feels stable and what feels risky. Love requires constant adjustment when it shifts without warning. Money does not. It stays neutral when you approach or retreat. It does not react to tone or timing. That neutrality matters more than comfort. The nervous system prefers ground that does not move under pressure. Emotional closeness can suddenly demand explanation or repair. Money never does. Its pressure arrives clean and contained. There is no second meaning hiding underneath it. With love, there is often another layer to decode. Silence can mean distance or punishment. Affection can carry future cost or obligation. The body stays alert around that uncertainty. Money does not trigger that alertness. It creates limits without emotional consequence. Over time, the system marks money as lower threat. It marks love as variable risk. This is not a decision made through reasoning. It is a response learned through repetition. The body moves toward what asks the least from it. Predictability starts to feel like safety. Even when it feels cold, it feels manageable. That is how money earns trust without closeness. As this pattern settles, it begins shaping identity quietly. Choosing love starts to feel like choosing instability. Choosing money feels like choosing solid ground. One part of you still wants closeness. Another part stays loyal to what never shifts. Depending on people begins to feel irresponsible. Depending on money begins to feel mature. This loyalty does not feel emotional. It feels practical and earned. You learn to trust yourself more around numbers than around feelings. You show up fully where reactions are minimal. You hold back where moods can change. Over time, this becomes a rule about who you are. You see yourself as steady and self-contained. Emotional need starts to feel like exposure. Stability becomes proof of adulthood and control. Love becomes something to manage carefully. This conflict does not announce itself as loss. It presents as growth and realism. But the loyalty is not neutral. It is allegiance to what never left you guessing. That allegiance hardens into identity before it is ever questioned. Several mechanisms quietly lock this pattern in place. Unstable love trains constant self-editing. You watch timing and tone and need before you speak. You adjust yourself to prevent shifts you cannot predict. You rehearse reactions in advance. Money never requires that calibration. It reacts the same no matter how you arrive. Another mechanism is emotional memory. Love remembers past moments and reintroduces them later. Money does not bring yesterday into today. It does not reinterpret history. Then there is withdrawal without explanation. People use distance as feedback. Money never withholds itself to teach a lesson. These differences reduce internal strain. The mind rests where it does not need to scan for meaning. Over time, effort itself becomes something to avoid. Trust drifts toward what demands the least emotional labor. This is not attachment to money, it is relief from instability. Love begins to feel expensive before it feels desirable. Numbers feel harsh but fair. You may lose, but you are not misread. You may feel pressure, but you are not corrected. These mechanisms reward distance from love without naming it. They make neutrality feel respectful. They make reaction feel unsafe. This is how money takes over emotional work quietly. As money takes on this role, the range of safety begins to narrow. You feel calmer with numbers than with people. Decisions with limits feel easier than conversations with feelings. Love starts to feel like an unstable surface. Money feels like ground that will not move. You begin choosing environments where reactions are minimal. Systems feel lighter than relationships. This does not look like withdrawal at first. It looks like focus and responsibility. It looks like being put together. You tell yourself you're being realistic, but the narrowing continues quietly. More emotional situations feel costly. More closeness feels like risk. The body responds by leaning harder into what stays predictable. Trust concentrates where nothing can surprise you. That concentration brings short-term calm. It also reduces tolerance for emotional movement. Unclear signals start to feel dangerous. Waiting feels inefficient. Ambiguity feels unsafe. Life begins dividing into manageable and draining. Money sits firmly on the manageable side. At this stage, it is no longer neutral. It is carrying stability love could not hold. Eventually, this trade starts asking for more than it gives. Money stays stable, but it cannot move toward you. Love stays risky, but it is the only thing that can respond. The system you built keeps you steady, but also alone in a quiet way. Money did not fail you. It did exactly what it promised. It never shifted, and it never reacted. But now it is doing work it cannot finish. Stability has replaced closeness. Predictability has replaced repair. What once felt like solid ground now feels narrow. The question is no longer why money took over. The question is what happens when love never gets a chance to feel safe again.